There, perfect. Oh, we have fun. Well, sort of. 2, 3, 4. Bet it, dee, da, 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 da. Dee, 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 doo, 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 doo. La, 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 la. It's Wednesday. Hi, my name is Jimmy. When I went to the comic book store today. Right? Picks of the week. Do, do, do. Boy, Jimmy, your heart doesn't really seem in it today. Who said that? Which one of you, mother? So, as I've been... All right, you know what? I'll explain it one more time. I used to do that when I started doing this stupid thing, this video. I tried to make, 3 picks every week. I think that's a good number. 3 is the magic number, as De La Soul taught us. But lately, I've only been able to pull 1 or 2 because not that the books I'm reading aren't good, just that they're all books that I've already went on about at length. And if there's one thing this fella needs, it's less length. And yes, you can take that any way you please. So this week I bought Taskmaster #1. The Taskmaster! This was supposed to come out before quarantine. It was supposed to actually come out in conjunction with the Black Widow film, since apparently old Taskmaster here is in that film quite a bit. He was always more of a Captain America villain than he ever was a Black Widow villain, although I'm sure they've crossed paths at some point. I've always liked him because he has this badass skull face, but that's because I was a boy once upon a time. But there have been some really good... Taskmaster's deal is that he has a photographic memory when it comes to fighting. So he can watch somebody fight once and he can perfectly imitate their style and, fight them with it. That was what he did with Captain America. But he always loses because he doesn't have the soul that Captain America has. They've done some really good... In fact, there was... Okay, I'll get to that. This is also... The character is already... I'm already going to buy it because it's Taskmaster. The good news is also Jed MacKay is writing it. And Jed MacKay, I think my kid probably knows who he is, even, maybe. I know he does a lot of children's television. He's a producer of children... But he's been writing for Marvel here and there for a while. He wrote the Man Without Fear series that was kind of the bridge between the Mark Waid Daredevil and the Chip Zdarsky Daredevil, where Matt Murdock died. And it was really good. And then... Right, that was him. And he's written a couple other... He wrote a Daughters of the Dragon story that was digital only that I might have read, but I can't remember now. I think it was that Daredevil series, though. I remember reading that Daredevil series, and I'd seen McKay's name around, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll keep my eye out for this guy more. And then Alessandro Vitti is the penciler, another Italian. And he also used... I've been a fan of his for a while, because he used to draw a book called Avengers Arena, and that featured... What was her name? There was another... So Avengers Arena was essentially Hunger Games that Marvel wanted to do. It was a bunch of young superheroes, the kids, and they're all put on a desert island and forced to fight to the death by Arcade. And I can't remember her name, is right on the tip of my tongue. Unless she ended up... Okay. There's a character... because now that I'm thinking about it, it might have been a different title that followed Avengers Arena. What followed Avengers Arena? After they got off that island at the end of Avengers Arena, those characters all went on to be another Avengers team that I can't remember the name of that now. Gosh. I gotta start hitting myself. I gotta stop hitting myself in the head with a sledgehammer before I do these every day. I don't know why I even started. Her name is right, it's driving me bananas. But that was her power also, is that she was super adaptable. She could adapt a fighting style very quickly. And so there was a lot of... They had Taskmaster was in that book. Yeah, because this was after... This book that I'm no longer able to remember the name of was after the Civil War. And so... Yeah, all the kids on Avengers Arena on the island ended up being, Avengers in Training. Avengers Academy, I think, is the title of the book I'm trying to think of. That makes much more sense. Avengers Academy, right. And the kids, though, they were all brought ostensibly to be trained by Hank Pym to be Avengers, but as they found out a few issues in, maybe not even that far, they were actually being kept under very close watch because they had the most likelihood to become supervillains. And one of them, it was heavily implied, if not outright said, was Taskmaster's daughter, because she had the same power. That was a long way to go for that. But Alessandro Vitti also drew Avengers Arena, and that was how I was attempting to. And then picks up last week. I am way behind. I am now like 3 weeks behind on my funny books. Don't care for that turn of events whatsoever. It's not even necessarily that I haven't had time. It's that when I have had time, I've kind of just wanted to go outside. I've been walking a lot. My legs are killing me. All right. That's enough about you. First up, we had Crossover number 1 by Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw. Oh, my goodness. So as I noted last week, I assumed this would be something very meta, because the young fellow here on the cover is being blown away by a comic book. The term crossover, if you're not familiar, I'm sure you've heard me say it a million times, is whenever characters from another title cross over into a different one. And they usually, Marvel and DC do them every year. They do one big one every year, a couple smaller ones, and then there's always a few little ones going on, The story in this book called Crossover, though, is a world wherein, I think it's Denver, Colorado? Some city in America is suddenly overtaken by superheroes, and recognizable ones, all the Marvel and DC pantheon. They get around it with the rights and stuff. But it's like The Boys, where it's heavily implied that these are all superheroes that you know. So they all show up in this city, and their villains all show up, and they're fighting them, is destroying it, like so now we're seeing a more realistic, like, it's very similar to Marvel 1985 that Mark Millar did, I want to say like in 2013, where it's essentially you take our world that we know and then you cram superheroes into it. It doesn't usually end up good. So all these people were killed, and there was all this property damage, and all this huge disaster. So comic books aren't outlawed exactly, but they're definitely not much cared for, and it's really good. So it's this thing where I was thinking this when I read it. When I was a kid, reading comic books was strictly for dorks. There was nobody reading comic books that weren't dorks. But there were a lot of us, because we were all in 8th grade. And show me somebody who's in the 8th grade that's not a dork. Even the coolest 8th grader, I could kick down the stairs. So it doesn't, you know what I mean? But then, my generation grew up and started making superhero movies, and the rest of us all started watching them all the fucking time. So now superheroes are popular again. This book kind of resets that, and it makes me feel kind of nice. It makes me feel nostalgic for junior high, which, let me tell you, tall order. You have to really try hard to get me to be nostalgic for the years 1989 through 2020. So that's a sign of a good book. I highly recommend it. I know Jeff Shaw's name from something else too, and I honestly feel like a dope for not. Nah, it doesn't matter. Also, last week I read Happy Hour number 1. This was a lot of fun. Also, this is a Peter Milligan book, and I think it was another one I didn't know anything about going in. And whatever I guessed last week was wrong. It wasn't completely off the mark, but it was wrong. So in this book, superheroes are not outlawed, but sadness is. And so it's now illegal to be sad or upset in this dystopian future. And it's a very simple premise, and he kind of plays it for laughs a little bit, Milligan, which is not unusual for him. All those English writers are usually pretty funny, even if that's not like their main thing. And yeah, this is, again, speaking of being reminiscent for the early 90s, this is very much like early Milligan, early Vertigo. All the Vertigo books from the earliest days, like 93, I think was when Vertigo was officially made an imprint, even though Sandman and Swamp Thing and Animal Man had all been around up until that point. But a lot of, at least my takeaway from most of the Vertigo books when I was that age was, be yourself and don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. So, and a lot of that was because Peter Milligan wrote a series called Egypt, and that theme was prevalent. Enigma, most especially. And Enigma is one of my favorite, it might be my favorite Peter Milligan story. And it has a lot, it's essentially this, except it's with gayness. And it's not illegal. You will have to read it. But Yeah, it's really good. It's I don't know, it's old home week around here, I guess. Go Eagles, class of '95, and also this week I read John Walker, U.S. Agent #1. Oh boy, this was exactly what I thought it would be, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. So it's very Priest, like I was saying. He does that thing where like he does a lot of talking heads, which Bendis also does, which I think is fun. This is the only time I like talking heads. I don't much care for the band, and I don't much care for television news. But when Priest does it, it's really good. And the story revolves around there's this small. This is such a good idea for a U.S. agent story. Small town America, a large corporation has built a factory and is then in the town and is essentially killed the town. So the citizens of the town blow the place up, but as it turns out, it's owned, or it's somewhat owned. It's somewhere, or whoever owns it sends U.S. agent out, John Walker out, and he's ready to do, because he's loyal to whoever's not just paying him, but, you know, this is not the sort of thing John Walker voted for Trump, I guarantee you, is my point here. So he shows up like, hey, you guys just blew up a factory. And I don't think it's not explicit in this issue, but it's heavily implied. It's like, it's really that curveball where you figure, oh, man, U.S. agent's going to fight these people who are just trying not to die where they were born. And it's gonna, yeah, it was really good. Also last week, even though I bought this years ago, I only just read this week. This is called Babies in Black, and it's by Arne Belstorff, who is a German comic book creator. Yeah, currently lives in Hamburg, Germany. I'd not read any of his stuff before. He's writing an illustrated monthly comic page. So he does a lot of stuff in German. But this might be his first work in English. Says you might be able to tell from the title and from these cutie pies, this is a book about the Beatles, specifically their years in Hamburg. This is Stuart Sutcliffe, the original bass player for the Silver Quarrymen, or the Quarrymen and the Silver Beatles, and also the Beatles. This is Astrid Kircher, who is a very famous photographer. She was the Beatles' first like official photographer, and she met the Beatles when they were working in Hamburg a lot, which I'm sure you're aware of, and became friends. And then she started dating Stuart. They became a thing, and so this book is it's pretty much just their kind of love story. It's very well drawn, very well plotted, very well written. I read it in a sitting. I mean, it's not super thick, but it was hard to put down. And it's such a tragic story, even if you don't care about the Beatles. And I got burnt out on them. I've only recently become interested in the Beatles again. And a lot of, especially with stuff like this, when I was a kid, nobody ever talked about Stuart Sutcliffe. I knew who Pete Best was when I was a kid, but I didn't know who Stuart Sutcliffe was. So, yeah. Like, this is the sort of thing that I would be more interested in. I'm going to watch goddamn Hard Day's Night again. Picks up last week. Okay, we're at 13 and a half minutes, and that's good enough. Okay, I'm going to try and read everything by next week, and then I'll talk about everything, and it'll be 3 hours long. Until then, 2, 3, 4, beep, boop, 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 boop.